In this Helldivers 2 build, we're going to be taking a look at a build that fully maximizes expendable tools within Helldivers 2 versus the Automatons. Now, this build is not only going to be great for solos, but it's also going to be great for people that like to play with teams because your teammates can use all these expendable tools that you're going to be dropping onto the map. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering all aspects of this build from start to finish, and then we're going to go over a brief synopsis of how you're going to play this build ultimately when you're actually doing your runs against both the Incineration Corp bots as well as the base Automatons as well. So what we're going to be calling this build is we're going to be calling it Mr. Expendable. Anyways, let's talk about it. All right, so jumping into the damage section first, we're going to be bringing 3 different options, and the first one is going to be the Purifier. So the Purifier is a high damage, high stagger weapon that provides not only a great source of damage, but is also a great form of crowd control versus the Automatons. Now it deals 500 damage with medium penetration, and it does have an aforementioned 35 stagger, which means again it's going to be bouncing those Automatons all over the place, very similar to something like the Plasma Punisher, only with much higher damage. Now the splash damage this thing does is 300, which means not only are you going to be doing a lot of great damage directly with 500 total damage to those initial targets you're hitting, but all the splash damage hitting the other enemies is going to be 300, so you're going to be killing enemies very, very quickly overall. So because of the medium penetration, this is going to be able to take on the majority of enemies on the field, from the Devastator enemies to the Strider enemies to even the vents. If you're taking on the towers, the Hulks, the tanks, or whatever, if you shoot them in the vents, it's going to take them out very quickly as well. So it's a very versatile weapon overall, and in general the Purifier is going to be great when you're facing Incineration bots because they do like to spam fire their shotguns and all their fire tools, and being able to stop them from doing that with the Purifier is really, really strong overall. Jumping into our next source of damage, which is going to be the HMG Emplacement. So the HMG Emplacement is a high damage mounted machine gun, meaning that it's going to shred through the majority of bots on the battlefield. Now this thing deals 200 damage per shot at AP4, which is heavy penetration, with a whopping 300 rounds in the emplacement, so it's going to have a ton of bullets to be able to put down range. Now again, this is going to be able to do great damage against Hulks, being able to kill them directly in the front when you shoot them in the eye. It's going to do great against Devastator, Strider enemies, and everything in between. It is just a very versatile piece of kit for this build. Now the cooldown is 154 seconds with all the ship upgrades, so you're going to have this back quite often. Even without the ship upgrade, it's going to come back very often as well. And because this is an emplacement, it's going to be stuck in one spot, but you do have 360-degree rotation, and it does rotate really quickly, so you're going to be able to lock onto your targets very, very quickly overall. Now placement for this thing is huge. If you place it in high elevated advantages or wide open spaces, it's going to perform very, very well, allowing you to support your teammates from a distance, and also being able to help just clear out a huge amount of enemies, especially when you're in the urban environments. You set this in the middle of the street, and you're just going to absolutely eviscerate whatever's in front of you. So it's a very, very useful tool overall for clearing out huge amounts of bots at once. Lastly, for the damage category, we're going to be bringing in the Secret Grenade. So the Secret Grenade is a impact grenade that has been crudely mounted onto a drone, so it will fly around and seek targets of its own volition. You can also use the marking system within the game, and the Secret will prioritize that target that you marked. You typically have to do it before you throw it. It's kind of clunky, but in general, we're not going to be using it primarily for that. So with that in mind, this grenade is going to have the same exact damage properties and the same properties as the impact grenade of its instant impact, as well as going to do 400 damage, and it does have heavy penetration. So the one thing that this thing is good for and why we're bringing it in is, yes, it's going to help us with some of the cannon fodder from time to time, but we're going to be primarily using this for those gun ships. If you didn't know, the Secret Grenade is an incredible tool for those gun ships. All you have to do is just throw this in the general direction of a gunship, and if they're close together, it'll destroy multiple at once. If it's just one, it will destroy it in one grenade. It is absolutely ridiculous. Now it takes some time to get there, admittedly, but it is a good way to just kind of throw something toward them and they will just go away. You don't really have to think about it too much. So the Secret Grenade is just very, very good for the gunships, and it's going to be decent against the cannon fodder. All right, so jumping into the anti-tank section, we're going to be bringing in 3 different options here as well, and the first one is going to be the Expendable anti-tank, or the the EAT. Now the EAT is a quick cooldown expendable rocket dealing 2150 direct damage with up to AP 6, meaning that it's going to be able to one-shot tanks, hulks, and everything in between, so it's going to do a lot of damage to those elite units. Now you're given 2 total of these rockets when you call down a hell pod, and again the cooldown is 60 seconds with all the ship upgrades. This is absolutely nuts. You're going to have these a ton, and again your teammates can use these, so definitely encourage them to grab these in anti-tank situations so you can eliminate things very quickly. Now it will take several rockets to destroy something like a factory strider, so it's not going to be the only thing we're going to be using to take these on, of course. But the great thing about this is that it can actually help us with some base clearing, because it's going to be able to one-shot fabricators with 1 EAT rocket, which is great. Overall, just with the quick cooldown and the overall damage profile of the EAT is going to be absolutely incredible for taking on the majority of anti-tank situations and helping us with base clearing. Next up is going to be the Commando. So the Commando is another expendable rocket, but instead of just getting 2 rockets with this one, we only get 1, but this rocket does have 4 shots, which is really good. Now these rockets deal 1250 direct damage up to AP 6, meaning that we're going to be able to 2-shot the majority of anti-tank situations, which is really powerful. So the main difference between this rocket versus the EAT is that this one is readily available right away. The EAT you actually have to extend and get ready to go, whereas the Commando is a quick swap reaction tool, so you can actually get rockets down range a little bit quicker, and obviously you get 4 total rockets over the 2 that you get with the EATs, meaning that when you do the math and you combine all the damage potential of both, the Commando technically on paper deals more damage overall. But the other big difference with this is that it is a laser guided rocket as opposed to just the normal type of rocket that the EAT is, so you're going to be able to guide this around wherever you want. It's going to make it especially good for taking out gunships and also taking out targets from much longer ranges. Now the cooldown for the Commando is a little bit longer at 102 seconds with all the ship upgrades, but it's still really quick overall when you're considering how fast these things come in. Now using both the EAT and the Commando in tandem means you're going to have constant anti-tank on the battlefield, because you're going to have more readily available EATs, and then the Commando is going to be something that you're going to keep on cooldown and on your back as often as possible to have that quick swap thing to be able to deal with whatever anti-tanks are in front of you. And also very similarly to the EAT, the Commando can take out fabricators from any angle. The only difference is that it does take 2 total rockets, so it's not quite as efficient, so I would prioritize using the EATs for those fabricators, but it can do it from a little bit longer distance if you don't want to engage the enemies up close. Last up for anti-tank is going to be the anti-tank emplacement. So this is our big Mac Daddy anti-tank solution. This deals 1450 direct damage per shot at AP 6, and it has a whopping 30 rounds per emplacement, which is really strong. We're going to be able to demolish the majority of things on the Automaton front, whether it be the Incineration bots or the regular bots. Now, the crazy thing about this thing is that it's going to be able to absolutely wipe the floor with factory striders. You can take out the top gun in 1 shot. You can take out the guns under its face in 1 shot. But more importantly, you can take this out in just a few shots. I think it's upwards of 5 or 6. It's really not that many when you consider how many shots you get with this thing. So if you're dealing with the convoys or you're dealing with multiple anti-tank situations, from hulks to factory striders, to even drop situations, this thing's going to be able to mop the floor with those things if you place it well. Now the cooldown for this thing is 154 seconds, so it's the same as the HMG emplacement, which means you're going to have it quite a bit when you have all those ship upgrades. Now again, this is going to be primarily for dealing with those drop situations and the factory striders, so anytime we have something like that on the map, we're going to be dropping this in, and it's going to help us just wipe out all the enemies from this drop ship situation or factory strider. If there are multiple of them or just even one, your teammates are going to thank you so much, because you're going to be absolutely destroying whatever enemies are in your way. Now the anti-tank emplacement is also very, very good at taking out the larger bases. If you place it well, or if you have a really high elevated advantage, you can wipe out an entire fortress or some of the larger bases on the map, as well as some of the other lighter buildings like fabricators and things like that can be one-shot very easily with this thing. So overall, the anti-tank emplacement is an extremely good piece of equipment, and if you place it well, elevated areas, open spaces, it'd be incredible for being able to deal with whatever situation is in front of you, whether it be anti-tank or just general horde clearing. All right, so next up in the base clearing section is going to be the Ultimatum. So we're not going to need the Ultimatum much for anti-tank in this build, even though it is a really good source of anti-tank. So the Ultimatum deals 4,500 direct damage at AP 8, meaning that it's going to be able to take out the majority of enemies, but also be able to take out the majority of objectives, which is why we're bringing this in. So the penetration level means that we can take out things like like detector towers, rogue research centers, fabricators obviously, and other various objectives on the bot front. There are just a lot of these, and this having this one tool available is going to be very nice, so we don't always have to call in hell bombs. Now there are a couple of things like gunship factories and things like that you can't take out with this thing, but there are a lot of objectives that are destroyable with the Ultimatum, which is the main reason why we're bringing it in. Now the ammo is very limited with this, can resupply it from ammo bricks throughout the map if you're running an urban environment, and you can also refund it with resupplies if you want to as well. So we're going to be using it sparingly again, just for those anti-tank situations, not very often, but we're going to primarily be using this to help us take out some of those objectives, especially those annoying ass detector towers. All right, so next up for armor passive, we're going to have two different options because it just depends on whether you're fighting the incineration bots or if you're fighting the jet brigade slash the regular automatons. So you're going to be able to bring in either the inflammable armor passive for the incineration bots or the fortified armor passive for the regular bots. The main reason being is that the incineration bots use a lot of fire, so you're going to be constantly on fire, so you need something to protect you from all this fire damage. Now the inflammable armor passive gives you a flat 75% resistance to fire damage, which is huge. You're going to stay alive so much longer because of all these random fire encounters going on. Now if you're facing the other automatons, fortified is very good because you're going to take 50% less explosion damage, which is great, and then you're also going to have that increased recoil control, which is a nice cherry on top, but really we're bringing it in for that explosion damage. I do find that a lot of times there's just random splash damage everywhere, and I do survive a lot more when I am running fortified. Now with both of these armors, the key thing is that the heavier the armor, more resistance you're going to have overall. Basically how the game works is that your health pool is increased and your overall resistances are increased based on the heavier armor you're wearing. So if you are wearing the heaviest armor in the game, in terms of the fortified version and the flammable version, you will be taking significantly less damage overall. So I highly suggest that you wear both, because with the automatons especially, it's not necessarily about speed all the time. It's about being able to tank shots and be able to survive the ragdolling and whatnot, especially when you're on fire and stuff and all the various things going on. So just do yourself a favor, wear heavy inflammable and wear heavy fortified when you are considering both of these options. So giving you some general gameplay tips on how you're going to play this build against the automatons. So depending on the variant you're facing, it's going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be more or less the same in how you engage them. So the incineration bots are a little bit more aggressive than your normal automatons because they do have more close range fire weapons. There are shotgun devastators. There's also flamethrower troopers and whatnot, and it's just a little bit more of a close range encounter, so they're going to be trying to close that gap. So keeping that distance with the Purifier and other things like that is going to be huge, and the HMG Emplacement to be able to take them out quickly is going to be huge. And it's the same thing for the other automatons. They're going to basically be trying to shoot you from range a little bit more, and they're typically a little bit more inaccurate, similar to like a stormtrooper, but you basically want to be using the Purifier and the HMG Emplacement to engage them at range. So it's not too much different, it's just difference in the way that they will engage you overall. Now, especially when you're facing incineration bots, one of the key things is that you don't want those fire shotgun devastators to get close to you, because the worst thing that can happen is that they hit you with a pellet and you catch on fire. No big deal. If you're wearing the inflammable armor passive, you're going to not take very much damage. However, if you get shot really close with that shotgun, you're probably going to die or be very close to death, and the fire damage is going to finish you off. So that's definitely where you don't want to be. So trying to keep your distance with either automaton front is what you really want. Now, the biggest thing with this build is that your anti-tank options are plentiful between the EAT, the Commando, the anti-tank emplacement, and even the HMG and the Ultimatum. You're going to be completely covered with anti-tanks. You're going to have plenty of things to deal with the factory striders, the Hulks, and also the various other units on the field. Now, the great thing is that they all can kind of work together in this nice peanut butter and jelly type combination. Like, for example, when you're on the HMG emplacement, you could just rip through Hulks and all sorts of other various things like that and help your team very well. When you're on the anti-tank emplacement, you can just rip through everything. And then in between, you could be using your Commando all the time. Keep that thing on cooldown, by the way. You always want to have the Commando on your back, and then call on your EATs to be able to help support as well and get your teammates involved where necessary, because again, you're gonna have plenty of anti-tank. You're not even gonna really think about the Ultimatum unless you had to deal with some sort of objective or whatnot, and that's kind of the design of this build, is just to save the Ultimatum to take out some of the larger objectives, like any of the towers in terms of like turret tower or any type of the mortar encampment or anything like that. That's where you want to be using the Ultimatum, not against the anti-tank stuff. And again, you're going to be able to take out factory striders so freaking easily with the anti-tank emplacements. Is very good. But overall, you're going to have plenty of damage, you're going to have plenty of anti-tank, and more importantly, you're going to have plenty of fun with this build, because it is an absolute blast running this thing because the HMG emplacement, I've covered it before in a build called the Action Hero. It really does make you feel like a superhero. You jump on this thing and you're just unloading hell on the automatons. It's very, very fun. And then the Purifier is just one of the best weapons in the game versus the bots, which is why I put it in here, because we are running so many expendable things that I wanted one constant for the build that I didn't have to worry about compensating for. So, but anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this Mr. Emplacement build. It was an absolute blast to run, and I'm going to keep running it a little bit more because I've been enjoying fighting the automatons, especially the incineration bots, and this build has made it even more enjoyable overall to do. So anyways, guys, I will catch you guys in the next video.